Hello and welcome to another Fantasy Premier League video. My name is Steve and the wild card is active. Yes, I've left it very late in the first half of the season and I'm kind of wondering if I should have pulled it 2 weeks ago. But regardless, we've got a wildcard to go through for game week 19. Now, apologies for the length of this video. There's no way I was going to be able to keep it short, as with any wildcard. There are a lot of decisions being made. As always, I have put chapters in so you can jump around if you want to go straight to the relevant points. Most of the spots are already locked in. I've got a couple of players that I need a little bit more information about with what happens in the remaining fixtures for game week 18, but the core structure is ready. I've currently got 7 changes to the team that you see on screen, which is the team that I put out in game week 18. It's actually 8 changes if you count Haaland coming in for Solanke once I hear a little bit more news out of the City camp. So there are a decent number of changes. Half the team has switched around. Now we've got a lot to get through, but before we get started, if you're not already a subscriber to the channel, consider subscribing. It really helps the channel out. And if you enjoy the following content, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Right, so this is how the wild card is currently looking. Now, I'm not going to just read it out. I'm going to go through every player, actually. And so this is why we've got quite a lot to get through. Now, first of all is the non-negotiables. So these are the players that were just in my wildcard, will not be moving, and are just completely locked in. So I've got Solanke in here at the moment. This is actually a spot for Haaland. I've currently got 7.5 million in the bank with this team on screen. If I just quickly jump over, you will see that Solanke to Haaland, with Haaland at 13.9 million at the moment, leaves me with 0.4 million in the bank, and he will definitely be in on my wildcard, assuming he is fit and ready for the weekend. Now, I don't want to mess around with transfers moving between Haaland and Salah, which is what a lot of managers are planning to do in and around AFCON. They're going to go, I think they've got Salah in their teams, don't have Haaland. They're going to use a couple of transfers to sell Salah and then get Haaland back in, and then they're going to somehow figure out how to have both of them at the end of AFCON and the Asia Cup. I don't want to be messing around with that because I just want both players in my squad leading up to AFCON. I'm going to sell Salah as soon as he leaves, and I'm going to buy him back as soon as he comes back from AFCON, and I do not want to be trying to move funds out of other players around the place to do that. So similarly, Salah is a non-negotiable for exactly the same reason, as I do not want to be messing around with switching money between Haaland and Salah. Now, Son is also a non-negotiable. I think he's the 3rd best asset to own in the game, even playing at left wing, and his stats will improve when Maddison returns. He should get a lot more opportunities with Maddison feeding the ball in and around the place, and Son may even be able to set up Maddison on the pitch, playing in that number 10 position. Saka is also a non-negotiable. He's been consistently ticking along all season and would have had more double-digit returns if he wasn't giving away penalties early in the season. Now, he has actually only scored 1 goal since game week 8. So it's actually been a bit of a dry spell for Saka, but I think this just means that he's much less likely to give away his next penalty. And so I do also want some sort of Arsenal attacking cover, and he is in the squad as a non-negotiable. Palmer is also a non-negotiable. I think he is the top value pick in the game, bar none. No one else comes close. He's on penalties, seems to be the man that is dictating how the attack is going playing out on the field. Great buy. If you do not already own him, I do not know what you're waiting for. Just get him into your squads. Watkins is also a non-negotiable, even though he did blank this morning against Sheffield United and I had him captain. He's got an insane run of fixtures. Villa are currently in form and have been for a while. They were third place heading into game week 18. Of course, they probably will drop a little bit with that draw against Sheffield United. They have a very attacking style of football, and Watkins is always heavily involved in the Aston Villa attack. One thing I did pick up from the game this morning, though, is Villa do struggle quite a lot against the low block. They just do not seem to be able to work the ball in and around, so I will be a bit more careful with any sort of Watkins captaincies around teams that are going to set up the low block. But regardless of the fixture this morning, Watkins is one of my non-negotiables that will be going nowhere. Now next is Porro. He is a non-negotiable for me. He is actually incredibly involved in all of the attack that Spurs are generating, and this is from open play attack. He seems to be quite pivotal to the way that Postecoglou is playing. His attacking stats will be inflated at the moment as he has got all set pieces, or has been on all set pieces since Maddison's injury, and he will lose a chunk of those, if not all of them, when Maddison returns, which isn't actually too far away. But Porro is just like a cheaper version of Trent or Trippier. He's doing basically all the same stuff, apart from the fact that he's just more involved in the open play attack. Great value at 5.5 million. He is one of the first names I put down on the wildcard. I actually wished that I did buy him a couple of weeks ago. And then the final non-negotiable on my wildcard is Dubravka in net. Way too much of a value goalkeeper with Pope out injured with a dislocated shoulder for quite an extended period. 4.2 million, just a set and forget keeper, and a very strong defense is a complete no-brainer. I'm not going to try to overcomplicate this. Dubravka is in. Right, so that leaves my differentials. Now, these are the spots that I am not quite fully committed to yet, and I will just talk through the various decisions that I have made here. So first of all is Kulusevski in midfield. So I'm currently opting for Kulusevski instead of putting the money into defense, and I think this will stick. Now I am still toying around with the idea of maybe going Trippier or Trent in defense and allowing myself the ability to bounce between the two and then pulling Kulusevski out of midfield. But what's currently got me with Kulusevski in my wildcard draft is that I'll definitely want Maddison as soon as he's fit, and Kulusevski will be a relatively easy slide over to Maddison when Maddison does return. Now, I say mostly easy. I will need to find some funds in order to buy Maddison, as Kulusevski is down at 7.2 million and Maddison's current listed price is 7.8 million. But Kulusevski is basically doing the Maddison role, assuming that Spurs actually keep all 11 men on the pitch. I mean, Kulusevski has been moved around quite a bit when they do lose or have gone down to 10 men in the recent games. Kulusevski has also been put up front for the final 10 to 15 minutes of matches to see matches out. Very strong on the ball, good hold-up play, very involved in the attack. I actually picked him a couple of weeks ago when he moved into that number 10 role, and I'm actually very gutted that I did not jump on him when I pointed him out. He is in on wildcard and I think is almost certainly going to stick. So as I said, The other option is to go for a premium defender play. Now, if I do go for the premium defender play, I will eventually need to pull the money out of defense, potentially at very short notice, and that could actually be quite tough in a few weeks' time when AFCON and the Asia Cup kicks off. Now, I've already got 2 transfers booked in for game week 21 with this wildcard because Son and Salah are both off to AFCON and the Asia Cup. And it is actually game week 21 when Maddison is expected back in the Premier League at the earliest time. So I don't think Maddison will be back fully playing in game week 21 unless he comes back maybe in game week 20 and gets a runner off the bench in the late stages of the match. But other players like Salah and Son, so I'll be selling both of them in game week 21, and they will be coming back in random game weeks based on when they get knocked out of AFCON and the Asia Cup. And I could end up in a situation where if I had the premium defender and I had my money in defense, Maddison comes back, Son comes back, and Salah all come back in the same game week. It's just going to be way too many transfers to deal with in a few weeks' time. Now, it is unlikely that it all coincides in the same game week, and it's probably going to happen over a number of game weeks. But I did just get stung with a suspension of Trippier, an unannounced injury of Isak, and 2 players in an abandoned match in the same game week, which had me playing with 9 men last game week. So anything can happen in FPL, and it's just easier, I think, to plan for the easiest route through the AFCON and Asia Cup period. Now, the whole Trent Trippier hokey cokey play would have to be timed perfectly. It will take a lot of transfers. That means that any injuries in my squad will almost certainly cost me hits, and it seems to be a relatively overly complex and risky strategy that is going to rely heavily on defensive returns. Now, I just genuinely think that Kulusevski could work out to be an ultimate differential. He could really rack up the points playing in the 10 in an attacking Spurs team. So I just think that Kulu could just be the way forward and will outscore a Trippier, Trent, hokey cokey type of play, and it saves me a whole bunch of transfers. So Kulusevski is almost certainly going to stick in this wild card. Now, the other player that I was toying around with in the middle of the park was indeed Richarlison. Now, the reasons that I was looking at Richarlison was that he probably will pick up penalties when Son departs for the Asia Cup with Maddison still injured. Now, it's either going to be Richarlison, who has a record of 6 from 7 penalties, or potentially Kulusevski. It's a bit of a stretch though, because he's only taken 1 penalty, but he had scored that penalty. But that solo penalty did come back in 2019-2020, so it's been about 3+ years since he's taken one. So without Son and Maddison in the team, my money is on Richarlison as the standout or probable front runner of the penalties at Spurs. However, who knows what's going on in training, right? So perhaps Kulusevski is practicing penalties and looking lethal from the spot. That is how Odegaard started picking up penalties off Saka earlier in the season. And there's every chance that Kulusevski could be wanting to work on his goal scoring data. Now, I know that is very slim. It is almost certainly going to be Richarlison. But the drawbacks to Richarlison is he is a mini Darwin. Mini in the fact that he is a lot cheaper than Darwin, so I would be more inclined to bring a Richarlison into my team as opposed to a Darwin Núñez. And Richarlison is, I think, a lot less wasteful with his goal scoring opportunities than, say, someone like a Darwin. If we just look at the straight stats here, Richarlison's goals minus expected goals so far this season is only negative 0.10. So he's scored 4 goals from a 4.1 expected goal tally for the season. So he's actually been doing pretty well in the expected stats respect so far this season. But I've seen him miss some absolute sitters. I've been watching a ton of Spurs full matches this season, and Richarlison can definitely miss an easy goal. Now, if we look at the expected stats to have some sort of comparison against Darwin Núñez, his goals minus XG is currently at negative 2.95. So he has scored 4 goals from an expected goals of 6.95 overall. So you can see that Richarlison is less wasteful than Darwin. He is still missing sitters, but Darwin is missing everything, which is something that I have pointed out on the channel in the past. But I was actually a little bit surprised to see Richarlison's goals minus X goals being so close to what that was, given what I have seen from Spurs. But we must remember that the stats do lie. So I don't typically make decisions on stats unless I am just completely caught out, haven't seen any other football, and then I will go to pick players off tables, which is quite a common thing in FPL. Now, either way, when Son leaves in game week 21, I will have Kulusevski and probably Richarlison in my squad if Maddison isn't yet fit. So it's all about whether I buy Kulusevski or Richarlison in game week 19 on my wildcard and the other player in game week 21. Now, considering Maddison is due back on the 14th of January, this is game week 21 when Son departs, I might actually be selling Son for Maddison rather than Richarlison. And if this does perfectly time itself, then we could see Maddison with penalties in front of Richarlison. So earlier in the season, when Richarlison wasn't performing too well and Maddison was basically just dictating all of the play on all set pieces and was just the engine or the key pivotal point to how Spurs were playing, I tipped Maddison to be second choice penalty taker in behind Son, and that is given that he was first choice penalty taker at Leicester and has a record of 5 penalties from 7 attempts. So Richarlison's poor early form may have been swaying this decision a little bit, and given that Spurs will need to rely on Richarlison with Son out of the squad. Now, this is actually why I think Richarlison is already back playing number 9. I think they're trying to work him back into the team as they know they're going to need to put someone up front. And the only other player that looks like he could play up front other than Richarlison is someone like Kulusevski, and I think they need him playing that number 10 role while Maddison is out of the picture. So it might not be Maddison that actually steps up to take penalties when Son is away. It could actually be Richarlison, as he might be gifted a few penalties in order to keep his goal scoring stats and his confidence up high. But it's either going to be Maddison or Richarlison, and I'm not going to make this choice based solely on penalties. I'm going to go for the better player overall, which will be Maddison. So in game week 21, if Maddison isn't quite back fit yet, I'll probably bring Richarlison into the team. Otherwise, I will just go straight to Maddison. Right, so we now move into defence, and I've gone for the Newcastle defensive triple up on wildcard. Now, this rules out Gordon, Isak and Wilson from any of my future plans. Isak and Wilson aren't really options though, unless one of them is injured. So I'm actually quite comfortable saying no to both. Now, Gordon is doing extremely well in midfield. We're currently unsure whether or not he's fit and available, as the Newcastle game hasn't yet been played. But regardless of what's going on with Gordon's injury, I just think that Palmer is just a much more elite option in that price point, and I don't see myself going with an expensive defense, which would require a player like Gordon playing alongside Palmer. So I'm actually quite happy saying no to Gordon, Isak and Wilson based on the structure that I've got in front of me for this wildcard. Now, I also love the Newcastle defence. It did extremely well for me last season when I was on a defensive triple up. So this is not the first time I've actually gone for a defensive triple up. I actually ran that strategy for quite a while in the season last year, and actually had me climbing up the ranks, earned me about 10 green arrows, helped contribute to about 10 green arrows in a row last season. And I actually had the defensive double up earlier on in the season, playing both Botman and Burn, and it actually worked a treat early on and got me very high up the ranks. Now, it's extremely good value in and around the 4.5 million price point and or below. Some managers out there hate a defensive double up because one goal can rule out 2 clean sheets. And a triple up is a bit of a head turner, and usually for people or other managers warning against a triple up, saying it's a completely bad idea and you shouldn't do it. Now, I actually look at this quite differently to most managers. I see it as only having to earn 1 clean sheet in 1 game, as opposed to having to find 3 separate teams that all have to earn a clean sheet. Now, this does add a lot more variance to the point swings, and perhaps that is actually why I like it. It's actually very similar to poker in this sense. The swings can feel brutal, but as long as you have a high big blind return rate over thousands of hands, you'll actually be just fine in poker. So in FPL, all I really need is Newcastle to clean once every 3 games in the matches where I start, or in the game weeks where I start all 3 Newcastle defenders. So I'm hoping that I can smash a clean sheet straight off the bat, and then follow it up with 2 from 2, which will send me very high up the ranks very quickly. Now, it could also completely backfire, and I am well aware of that, but I am not too worried about it. We'll see how it works out and how my nerves hold up through this period. Now, you do want to choose the team that you triple up on or double up on with extreme caution, right? So if I bring up my fixture ticker, now this is the 3rd view that I have set up at the moment. Now, if you did catch my last video, I did show my new advanced schedule view, which actually had a little bit of a bug in it. I have solved that bug this morning before recording the video. So what I have got put in here is all of the international fixtures in amongst the Premier League game weeks, so that you can see how AFCON and the Asia Cup affects from game week 21. You can see the Asia Cup starts just before 21. Then there's a whole bunch of all the matches playing, including the round of 16 matches, all in before game week 22. And the reason for this is there is actually a 2-week break between game week 21 and game week 22 in order to accommodate these international fixtures. If we roll it a little bit forward, you could see that the quarterfinals are after game week 22, the semi-finals are after game week 23, and then after game week 24 is the finals and the 3rd and 4th playoff, which is only an AFCON. Asia Cup doesn't actually have a 3rd and 4th playoff match. And you can also see out here in the distant future before game week 25 that the Champions League game week is in here as well, and you can see that Arsenal are playing is that FC Porto away and Man City have Copenhagen away. Now, apologies for the way it looks. I haven't had time to clean up how it looks. I just had to get it working. But anyway, that's the advanced schedule view for the fixture ticker. Now, if I go across to the advanced data view, now I haven't tidied up the naming of the columns at the end, but there are some new columns at the end of this view, and it's got the difficulty for the last 5 game weeks. So this is all based, the last 1, 2, 3, 4, last 5 columns in here is all related to the previous form. I've currently got it set to the last 5 game weeks. This will be configurable, so you'll be able to change it to last 4 game weeks, last 6 game weeks, or whatever you want. And it's showing the XG accumulated for the last 5, the expected goals conceded for the last 5, the difficulty of opponents for the last 5, and the rank, or the difficulty rank of the last 5 opponents. So that is what this is showing on screen at the moment. This is currently ordered by expected goals conceded across the last 5 fixtures. Now, if we just have a quick look at the expected goals conceded for the entire season, Newcastle are 5th in terms of best expected goals conceded. Now, I think there are only a few teams you could do a double or a triple up with this season, that being Newcastle. Well, obviously, because that's what I'm opting to go with. The other teams are Arsenal, obviously, top of the pile, Man City, second of the pile, and probably Liverpool, third of the pile. Maybe at a stretch, someone like Brentford or Everton, Villa, or maybe Chelsea, but I would not really recommend doubling or tripling up on those teams. So clean sheets are very hard to come by in the Premier League, so it's always tough when you're looking to double or triple up, and the results don't always show that you made a sound decision. Now, if you think of it this way, this is all around the defensive doubles and triple ups. If you captain Salah in a 9-0 victory, but he doesn't get any returns, so no goals, no assist, does that make you a bad FPL manager, or was that a bad decision? The answer is no, right? You'd have to say that you got the right game, Salah played all 90 minutes, and you just got unlucky with the returns in that fixture. So on the defensive triple up, if you triple up on a team that concedes the least number of shots across the whole Premier League per game, but you still manage to concede 1 goal a game, wrecking your triple clean sheet, does that make you a bad FPL manager? And I still think this answer is no. And although it's not quite as simple as, say, just looking at shots conceded, because things like price, form, difficulty of shots, and everything else that goes into FPL should be considered when you weigh up whether or not it is a good decision. I think this just kind of goes to show why I am happy to double or triple up on a team. So fingers crossed that Newcastle go on to be one of the top 3 for least conceded chances when I decide to play them, or all 3 of them, in any given game week. But at the moment, it is obviously Dubravka in net, because he is a non-negotiable for me. And then 2 of my negotiable players are Dan Burn and currently Lascelles. Now, Dan Burn has shown his attacking capabilities already from a goal in his first game back against Fulham in game week 17. He's also scored earlier in the season against Sheffield United in game week 6, which I actually owned him for and got the goal points out of him. He doesn't seem to do amazing on the bonus point system, as that seems to be lapped up by either Trippier or Botman when both are playing, sometimes Fabian Schär, but I think his attacking threat should get him in the bonus when he musters a return moving forward. Now, the risk to burn is Livramento did impress me in the matches in which I saw him playing with Burn out of the squad. And he might have even done enough to properly challenge Burn for a starting spot. However, Burn was immediately back into the squad at left back as soon as he was ready. Now, however, this didn't actually displace Livramento, because he actually came back last week. Livramento was moved to play at right back to cover Trippier's 1-match suspension. And this is actually one of the data points that I need from the fixture at the weekend. We didn't get any press conference out of Eddie Howe because of the early deadline. We've got no idea what's going on. I'm picking Dan Burn will start this weekend. However, if Livramento does start in place of Dan Burn against Luton, it will be a complete spanner in the works, and this will be a spot that I probably have to rethink. However, Newcastle are out of Europe now, so I'm expecting a bit more of a settled squad with less fixture congestion for the Newcastle team. So it'll be interesting to see if Burn and Livramento end up sharing minutes, or if someone comes out as a constant first team starter. I'm currently picking that Burn will be the first team starter and Livramento will just go back to the bench and only come on in the later stages of matches or to cover injuries. We will have to keep a very close eye on that. The other player is Lascelles, who is in the squad at the moment. Now, I haven't transferred him out yet because I am waiting to hear on Fabian Schär's injury. So Lascelles is currently 4.2 million. I bought him in for a bit cheaper. I think I bought him in at, might have been 4 million. What did I get him at? Yeah, I got him at 4 million, so his current sale price for me is 4.1 because he's currently listed at 4.2 million. However, if Schär is going to be out for an extended period of time, let's say he's out for 2 to 3 months with a hamstring pull or something, then I will just stick with Lascelles, as he will continue to play centre back and he will play alongside Botman. However, if Schär is only going to be out for a couple of weeks, I'm just going to go straight for Botman in this wild card, who comes with amazing bonus point accumulation when Newcastle keep a clean sheet and don't score too many goals. And he has quite a lot of set piece threat about him, as Botman is a towering unit. So is Dan Burn, actually. Actually, the Newcastle defensive normal first team starters are all pretty tall apart from Trippier. So it's pretty simple. I just need word on Schär's injury, and this will either be Lascelles or Botman. Now, with the money that I have in the bank, I have the money to go. Solanke's just in here as a placeholder. He might go up in price. I might earn a little bit of extra money out of him, and I wouldn't actually mind holding Solanke to play him in this Fulham mixture if Haaland is still injured in gameweek 19. And that leaves me 0.4 million in the bank going from Solanke to Haaland, and that is bang on exact funds to get me from Lascelles up to Botman. So my sale price of Lascelles is 4.1. Botman is currently 4.5. If I do start with Botman, it will leave me 0.0 million in the bank, which is something that I will discuss a little bit further along in the video about the strategy for this wildcard. On the bench, we have Gabriel, who's a super cheap way into the Arsenal defence, which is the best defence this season based on expected stats. Gabriel does come with a slight chance of rotation, but I'm actually much more comfortable that Arteta has abandoned the tweaks that he was making earlier in the season, which ended up seeing Gabriel benched. So he's actually got some relatively good attacking threat from set plays, but the main reason that I'm actually going with Arsenal is that the defense rotates very well with Newcastle apart from game week 26. So if I just pull up the default split view, get rid of all the teams and chuck in Arsenal and Newcastle, You can see that when Arsenal have a tough game against Liverpool 23, Newcastle are playing Luton. As I mentioned, that game week 26 is a bit of a problem as they play each other. Game week 30, Arsenal plays Man City, Newcastle with West Ham. I'm actually planning to play Newcastle in most of the fixtures. I will probably play Gabriel in game week... Oh, why are we up at 22? Let's go back a bit. Yeah, there we go. This is better. So, Newcastle will be playing game week 19 at home to Forest. They then have two very tough fixtures. Away to Liverpool, home to Man City. But Arsenal are playing Fulham away and Crystal Palace at home. That's a very great rotation. I'll probably play Arsenal defender in game week 22. I'll triple up on Newcastle in 23. It'll still be Newcastle 24, 25 and 27. I'm a little bit unsure what I'll do in 26, but that's only one game week to worry about. And then moving a little bit further out, that's probably a little bit too far away to plan for anyway. So that's why we have Gabriel in the squad. Great defensive option for quite cheap and rotates very well with Newcastle. And then my final defensive spot is Branthwaite from Everton. He missed game week 17 through injury, but has played 90 minutes every single game week apart from that, which makes him about as nailed on as it gets. Everton have had 3 clean sheets in the last 4 matches, which included clean sheets against Nottingham Forest, Newcastle and Chelsea, and they actually only lost the clean sheet to Burnley, which conspicuously coincided with Branthwaite's injury last week. Now, I don't think Everton probably conceded just because of Branthwaite's injury. It's just something that I am pointing out here. So he is only 4.1 million, and this is an absolute bargain, playing in the best defense at that price point for a nailed on player. So if we compare the other options at the 4.1 or below, he is a considerable upgrade on Taylor, Kabore, Baldock, Bayer, and if we even go up slightly higher to someone like Maguire at 4.3 million, I think Branthwaite and Maguire are probably very close in terms of clean sheet potential, but Maguire is currently injured and is actually 0.2 million more expensive, and with this structure I have 0.0 million in the bank, and so Branthwaite is in the team. He's only owned by 2.9% of all players, so he's actually a huge differential that not many players will have in their squads or will want to spend a transfer on. He will probably only make his way into teams that are wildcarding early with their second wildcard. So I will actually have him as a bit of a differential for quite a bit of time over the likes of Taylor, Kabore, Baldock, Bayer, and those other types of bench members sitting in various benches out there. And Everton also perfectly rotate with Newcastle. So if I just bring up Everton here, so I'll be playing the triple up in game week 19 of Newcastle. This is when Everton are actually at home to Man City. Then when Newcastle have this hard fixture against Liverpool and Man City, Everton are playing Wolves away and Aston Villa at home. Now, Aston Villa at home is a bit of a tricky fixture because Aston Villa are attacking very well, but at least it's at home. Then when Newcastle have to play Aston Villa, Everton are away to Fulham, and I can play my Arsenal and Everton player. I triple up on the Newcastle defence in 23, triple up in 24, triple up in 25, and then in game week 26, Branthwaite's a nice little cover here for the Arsenal-Newcastle match off, and then in game week 27 I basically have my pick of whatever defenders that I want to play. So my defensive rotation is pretty sound. I'm obviously just playing Porro every single game week here, which I always do with my attacking defenders anyway. It does not really matter who they come up against, even in the tough fixtures. I will just play them. And then that leaves 2 bench spots remaining. First one is Semenyo. from Bournemouth. Now, I am actually opting to play with a cheap playing third striker to try and limit the damage of what happened to me in game week 16 and game week 17, where I only ended up playing with 10 men and 9 men respectively. Although I suspect I will hardly ever use Semenyo. Now, he's currently 4.6 million, so he is comparable in price to Archer, but plays in a much more attacking team who muster a lot more ball possession than a team like Sheffield United. If you watch the Aston Villa game this morning, you will see the anti-football style of football that Sheffield United seem to play. So I think Semenyo has a better chance at returning. Now, it's only slightly better than returning than Archer, because Archer does have penalties and seems to get a lot more minutes than Semenyo. But Semenyo does have pretty decent attacking stats for the minutes that he has been granted. Even though he's only seemingly playing 70 minutes, okay, a 19-minute against Man City, but that is Man City. 80 against Newcastle, 65 Sheffield, 70, 60, 57. We haven't seen what he picks up in the Nottingham Forest fixture this weekend yet. But he is making it over the 60-minute mark and is getting some okay expected goal involvement for a £4.6 million asset. It is pretty slim pickings. Now, the only problem with Semenyo is he is off to AFCON to play for Ghana, so he will not be available for a couple of game weeks through the AFCON period. However, I have been playing with Woodrow up to this point as third on my spot, and I have never had to go that deep apart from in the game week just gone. So out of 17 game weeks, I only had to dip into my third bench spot once. So I don't really see myself using Semenyo very often, but potentially I could put him out and play him in any given game week. So I think instead of going for the cheapest option instead of Semenyo is probably still someone like Woodrow at 4.4 million, and so for the extra 0.2 million it's probably worth it. Although I am running really tight with funds. I have got 0.0 million in the team, assuming that this spot is Haaland and this spot up here is Botman. So I might go from Semenyo back down to Woodrow to put a little bit more funds into the bank, but I think Semenyo will probably stick. And then the final spot in my squad is actually still Turner. Now, he's a 3.9 million asset that was nailed on to start, was dropped for 5 games, and then started again in the last 2 game weeks. We don't know what's happening in game week 18 yet, as that fixture has not yet been played, but he has made some mistakes since coming back into the starting 11, so he is quite risky. And to compound problems, they have fired Steve Cooper at Nottingham Forest, and Nuno Esperanto Santo, it's actually quite a mouthful, that is now in charge, and so I will only have game week 18 to go on as to who his choice of starting keeper will be. If he's benched, then I may have to rethink this spot. However, the only other option at 3.9 million is Bentley at Wolves, and he has Jose Sa to worry about. And the next price point up from 3.9 million for a bench goalkeeper is Areola at 4.2 million, which is a 0.3 million more expensive upgrade, and Areola looks to have lost his spot anyway, but he has lost his spot to Fabianski, who is also 4.2 million, playing in the same team at West Ham. Now, Areola kept 0 clean sheets all season until he was dropped in game week 15. Fabianski has managed 1 clean sheet in the last 3 games that he's started, so perhaps West Ham's clean sheet potential has increased with him in net. But is it really worth the extra 0.3 million? That would cause me a problem with Lascelles at some point in future. So if I went with someone more expensive as my second goalkeeper, I would have to go with Lascelles. Lascelles will eventually lose his spot to Fabian Schär, and I just don't think that mucking around with that defensive spot is actually worth upgrading my second bench keeper. So Newcastle can keep a clean sheet against anyone in the Premier League, so I'll happily take it on the chin and play Dubravka in the tough matches if my choice of either Turner or Bentley happen to lose their spot. So I'm probably just going to go with a set and forget Dubravka and just put a 3.9 million keeper in out of Turner or Bentley, who I think has the best shot at starting the most games moving forward. Now, that is the entire team and why I have chosen each of the players. Now, I'm very quickly going to go into a bit of a meta strategy. So, with the future transfers, I am planning to sell Salah and Son in game week 21. Now, I currently have 0.0 million in the bank, and so if I do sell Salah and Son and their prices don't drop down to my sale price, of which I will lock in game week 21 by the time that they come back from AFCON and the Asia Cup, I will have a bit of a problem getting Son and Salah back into the team. So if I just quickly bring up the list view here, I bought Son for 9.1 million. My sale price is 9.4 million and his current price is 9.8. Similarly with Salah, I bought him at 12.5. He's currently at 13.2 and my sale price is 12.8. So if we assume that this does not change before game week 21 and I sell both players right now, assuming it's game week 21, I would sell for 12.8 and 9.4, and I would hope that this price of 13.2 million on Salah drops by 0.4 million to 12.8, and I would have to hope that Son's price of 9.8 million also drops all the way down to 9.4 by the time that they come back from AFCON and the Asia Cup. Now, with this strategy, it does mean that I will have to move very fast on selling Salah and Son in game week 21. I will have to sell them right at the start of the game week to ensure that I'm almost certain that a whole bunch of managers out there are going to sell these players when they depart. Their prices will drop like a stone. It'll be a very quick drop in that first game week, and so I will need to probably sell them at the start of the game week in order to have the best shot at being able to pick up these players for the same sale price for which that I sell them for. Right? There's a bit of a mouthful. It's a little bit complicated, but hopefully that made sense. Now, if I do manage to, there's also the opportunity though here that I could end up buying them back for a cheaper price. Now, Maddison, who I was umming and ahhing over when he got injured, I sold him instantly early in the week. My sale price on James Maddison was 7.8 million when he was currently listed for 8.1. I'm now looking at a couple more game weeks before Maddison will be fit and available to come back, and Maddison's current price is 7.8 million. So if and when I buy Maddison back, I will be buying him back for at least the same price that I sold him for. And if he drops down to 7.7 million, I will actually make some additional funds by having sold Maddison a few weeks ago instantly and then buying him back at a cheaper price. So that is still a possibility for Salah and Son. They are two very heavily owned assets in the game, and I think many managers will probably sell them, and so I think they will come down to very close to their sale price of 12.8, 9.4-ish. Fingers crossed that that is the way that that works out. But the reason that I am looking to do this is, where am I? Sorry. These two spots of Salah and Son are the two spots that I am going to be using to attack during AFCON and the Asia Cup. So I am not planning to make any transfers to any other player in my squad. Even with injuries, I think I might just bench the injured players, as I will have a full playing bench, apart from Semenyo, through the AFCON and Asia Cup period for a couple of game weeks. I think Ghana probably won't last too long in AFCON, and so Semenyo might be back a lot sooner than, say, Salah and Son, who play for the favourites in their, well, some of the favourite teams for their respective competitions. So I'm going to be bouncing around between the Salah and Son spots across this period. And in game week 21, I'm looking to sell Salah for Bowen, and then to sell Son for either Maddison, if he's back fit, Foden, who might double, because that Man City and Brentford fixture still has not been rescheduled in, Odegaard at Arsenal, or maybe even a Richarlison if Maddison isn't back fit and ready. But it will probably be either Maddison or Foden, depending on Man City's double. And then in game weeks 22 and 23, well, 22 are probably going to be banking the transfer, so I'll have Bowen and, say, Maddison in my squad. Bank the transfer game week 22. Game week 22, Maddison should have got some sort of run out in game week 21 if he did not start. And so in game week 23, Maddison will almost certainly be back by that point, and one of or both of Salah or Son might be back from their respective tournaments. In game week 24, it is very likely that either Salah or Son will be back, if not both. And then game week 25, Salah and Son will almost certainly be back, assuming that they aren't granted any additional time off if they happen to win AFCON or the Asia Cup. So I'll be bouncing around the likes of Bowen, Maddison, Foden, Odegaard, Richarlison with these two spots in midfield across the AFCON Asia Cup period, and I'll be buying Son and Salah back once they return from their various schedules. Now, there's only two other players with special mentions. One is Nkunku, who looks like he is finally getting some game time in the Chelsea squad. Chelsea's attacking stats in the last 5 game weeks are very high, and if it looks like Nkunku is a clinical finisher, he could thrive with the amount of XG that Chelsea are generating. And given that they've generated more than enough chances for Jackson to prove himself up until this point, and Jackson hasn't proved himself, I think that Nkunku will very quickly take his number 9 position if Nkunku is geared up for that role. There is a slight chance that Nkunku may look to be played in the number 10 though, which might see Pochettino continue with Jackson up front in the number 9, or even potentially play Palmer in a false 9. But I think he will just use Nkunku to easily remove the requirement of having to rely on Jackson's poor finishing. So if Nkunku looks like he's a clinical finisher, I may switch Watkins over to Nkunku to have a little bit more funds to play around with, to make it A, easier to get Maddison in for Kulusevski, and B, to buy Son and Salah back if their prices don't fall as far as I'm hoping that they do fall. So Nkunku is on a fringe. He won't make it into the Game Week 19 wildcard, as I will need to see him play in the Chelsea lineup for a couple of game weeks, but a future transfer might be Watkins out for Nkunku, depending on how he plays. And the only other special mention is Alvarez, and that is if Haaland isn't back for the Everton game in Game Week 19, I might just start with Alvarez in that Solanke spot, and then use a transfer to bring Haaland in for the first game he's available, because they have Who is it? Game week 20. They have a really decent fixture. Where's Man City going? Fuck, second top. Sheffield United at home. So I will have to have Haaland in game week 20. If I do go with an Alvarez starting player, and this is also why I'm a little bit umming and ahhing over starting Solanke if Haaland isn't fit, I might just bring Haaland in and bench him and play Semenyo against Fulham. And the reason for that is I've got 2 transfers planned for game week 21. If I start with Alvarez if I start with Haaland not in the squad, it will cost me a hit in game week 21 to sell Salah and Son, because I will be bringing in Haaland game week 20, and I don't fancy benching that much funds by benching Salah or Son for one game week. So Alvarez doesn't... I could start with Alvarez. The difference in punt here is I would have to have Alvarez return in game week 19 to pay for the hit that I will be taking for Haaland for Salah and Son in game week 21. So I could start with Haaland on the bench and play Semenyo, or I could start with either Solanke or Alvarez and bring Haaland in, but that will cost me a hit. And then if I do go down that street, I will require Solanke or Alvarez to return in game week 19 to make that play viable. Now that is it for today's video. A very long one. Hopefully you managed to stick with me through it. Hopefully I didn't ramble too much, and hopefully that all made sense. So if you enjoyed this video and got something out of it, press the like button and consider subscribing. And if not, that's alright too. I appreciate you watching. And until next time, cheers.